Hey everyone, you're listening to Concentrates with Dr. T. I'm Dr. T. Thank you for joining me today. Please follow me on TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, all the different social medias, and like my podcast episode. And also ask me any questions that you have and comment, please. Today I'm going to kick off season 3 of this podcast, and I'm going to change up the format quite a bit. So I'm going to get away from the more formal information dumps that I've been kind of doing before and start keeping you up to date with cannabis news. And I'm also going to be doing a special feature each week, which will start with a special message from me about nutrition and cancer research and plant medicine, because cannabis does fit in, of course, with the overall broader topic of plant medicine. So this message is very important. Moving forward into future episodes in this season, I'm going to be doing dispensary reviews of local dispensaries in Seattle. I'll hopefully branch out and be doing dispensary reviews in other cities, but get ready for a number of them to come from Seattle first. I'm going to be reviewing different aspects of these dispensaries, like their customer service and their layout and their product selection and other things. So this will be a lot of fun, and I hope you learn a lot. I've already learned a lot from some of the dispensaries I've visited so far. So please subscribe and follow me for a lot of great content coming up in season 3 and of course beyond. So now I'll get a little bit into some news updates. So today a very interesting story came across my feed from SF Gate. The title of this news story is California is losing legal pot farm licenses by the hundreds. So the article goes on to talk about how cannabis farmers in California are literally opting out of their licenses, hundreds a month. And the state has lost 23% of its total legal canopy so far. And they're blaming this on a combination of the price reductions in the price of flour and bulk material that farmers receive, and also in the overregulation and the overtaxation that California has imposed. So if certain people's goals, that certain people in the California government, if their goal was to overregulate and overtax to make this system unachievable, then they appear to be succeeding. This kind of system, this kind of marketplace really needed some nurturing to get going, which would have been some lower taxes so that people could make some money to not only make a profit, but also reinvest into their businesses to make better workplaces, better production processes, and better employee compensation and perks. But none of this could happen because they're always on a shoestring budget, because they don't make very much money because of the taxes and the, well, in this case also, there was probably too many licenses given out. This led to an oversupply, which led to a very severe drop in price when it wasn't just probably 1 year's supply. So it wasn't just they grew this year and had too much. They've grown for several years, and there's like stockpiles of this probably. So at that point, you're selling it very cheap, probably to extractors even, and that's maybe sounds good for the customer, but if there's high taxes on the other end, the customer doesn't see too much of a benefit in price reduction, and so maybe they don't buy as much as they need to make a volume play viable for a producer. So this is really sad because, a lot of people put life investments into these farms, into the dreams of having a cannabis farm, a small cannabis farm even, that they could then sell the flowers that they care so much for at a good price that would make it worth it, and that they could have a good living and just a good life, and that was really all their goal was. But then, of course, you have people with bigger ambitions who want larger farms, and at some point when you have these larger and larger farms and the outdoor grows, cannabis is a very robust plant. It's going to grow very well. And so you're going to end up with an oversupply. So what's the answer here? One answer in this case would be to lower taxes to help the legal farmers to compete with black market suppliers better. Also crack down on this hemp Delta 8, the synthetic Delta 8 THC that's coming from hemp. That needs to be cracked down on in California so that that's not competing with Delta 9 as well. And the synthetic Delta 8 is dangerous anyway. So that's one bit of news that caught my attention this week, wanted to share. It's unfortunate to see the market in California contracting. It seems to be a pattern that is developing across developed markets in Washington and Colorado as well. I'll bring you more information about those as things develop. But there was a green rush right when the marketplaces in Washington and Colorado first opened to adult use. Then there was kind of a green boom after that with the COVID lockdowns and easing of restrictions for cannabis companies. In fact, allowing for things like curbside delivery during the COVID times. And there was even drive-thrus that were allowed during COVID. I saw one drive-thru in particular in Denver. So on top of that, cannabis workers and cannabis companies were deemed essential during the COVID crisis. So going from federally illegal and still federally illegal to adult use legal less than 10 years ago to essential just 2 or 3 years ago in the height of the COVID crisis. It's amazing. So after being called essential, they were allowed to stay open, and people were then given if you recall, the boosted unemployment paychecks. And so it's hypothesized that a lot of people end up spending at least some of this money on something to help them relax at home. They're unemployed at home. They can't do their work. They can't do their normal things that they would even do if they were unemployed during normal times. They couldn't go visit family and friends or go to a bar or a restaurant or have fun. So yeah, that's a little update on some news coming out of California. Definitely doesn't paint a very pleasant picture of the cannabis industry as a whole right now, but there are definitely bright spots in the country. So if you look at developing markets like New Jersey, New York, even Michigan is really just ramping up as well. So there's a lot of good things happening in those developing markets, but we're also seeing challenges develop in the mature markets, and we'll just have to take those head on and see how things continue to go. So with that, I'm going to move on to the special message I've previously recorded. Okay, so I'm going to run through a few news stories that have come out pretty recently that just highlight the points I'm making in the message I'm about to show or have already shown, depending on how I edit this. The first article is called "Live Free and Die: The Sad State of U.S. Life Expectancy." It came out March 27th this year. It's from NPR. So the takeaway is that life expectancy in the US continues to decline, while other countries maybe saw a life expectancy decrease during COVID. That is now rebounding, and their life expectancies are now increasing, whereas in the United States it's continuing to go down. So the reason for this is, quite honestly, our horrible food, nutrition, and medical system. And I'll get into that in the message. But let's move on to the next article. This is from CNN Health, and the title is "Colorectal Cancer is Rising Among Younger Adults, and Scientists Are Racing to Uncover Why." The reason why is because our food system sucks, and so does our medical system. And I'll get into some more details of that in the message, but basically we spend too much money on trying to treat things, and we don't put any or not enough focus on trying to prevent things. And we allow a lot of garbage into our food at this point. So let's move on to the next one. This one's titled, "Are Supplements the Key to Easing Long COVID-19 Symptoms?" So it's something I've been saying from when COVID-19 was first introduced to the world, is that we need to be focusing on nutrition and also small molecule therapies, how to support these patients. It's all well and good to have an effective vaccine, but really ultimately people are going to get sick with this, and we need to know how to support them and get them through it. And that would be with appropriate nutrition, natural medicines, and small molecules. So just now, years later, they're finding out that certain supplements may help to ease long COVID-19 symptoms. So these things are already present. So instead of getting so fancy with our treatments, we could spend a little bit more time, effort, and money with what we already have to figure out how it fits in with even diseases that come out of nowhere, like COVID-19 did. So now let's move on to the next. Okay, and this one just says it's straight out. I don't even have to interpret this for you. The title of this article is, "Could ultra-processed foods cause ovarian and breast cancer?" And the answer is yes. Ultra-processed foods are at the heart of what's wrong with our food system and why so many Americans are so sick and struggle with obesity and losing weight and managing their stress and all of these things. So I'll end there and we'll move on to the message I have prepared before, and just keep these articles and things in mind because they just highlight what I'm talking about in that next segment. So thank you for listening, and we'll jump into it right now. So one thing that came up today, I was just scrolling through TikTok, and President Biden was apparently addressing the nation from Las Vegas, talking about lowering costs for American families. During that speech, something that caught my attention was that Biden said he had declared war on cancer and that he was serious about that. He declares war on cancer, which I thought was an interesting rhetoric, just straight out, thinking about what the war on drugs was and how that has turned out and how misguided that even was. So, yeah, I think we can all agree that cancer is bad, but when the government starts declaring war on things, you kind of start to wonder what's really behind it. And so he said that there was $5 billion of money that he was going to give for research for cancer. Well, most of that money is going to go to pharmaceutical companies to research cancer treatments, drugs, immunotherapies, maybe even mRNA and DNA-based platforms nowadays, genetic engineering, essentially. So what I would like to do at this moment is take the time to advocate for some of that research money, maybe even, let's just say 20% of it. Let's say 20% of it, 1 billion of the 5 billion, to go towards researching natural medicines, folklore medicines, traditional medicines, and also more preventive ways to prevent cancer. Why is cancer happening so often in the first place? Okay, our food system sucks. We're being poisoned constantly. They're putting all sorts of junk in these processed foods. We need to wake up to this and honestly take our own individual stands. We can't wait for the government to step in and do this. We've got to really just get back to our roots and start eating food. I was thinking about this one day because you know how people talk about blueberries are superfood and kale is superfood, and I was like, what the hell, where the hell did this word superfood even come from? You know, what did my grandma call blueberries? Oh, that's right, food. So what seems to have happened is that what our grandparents called junk food, we now just call food. And what they called food, we call superfood. So from their perspective, we should be eating food, which is, you know, blueberries, kale, whatever, you know, good food, and not eating junk food, or eating that only in moderation. Processed foods, candies, sweets, sugars, things with lots of chemicals in them. But from our perspective, we just regard all of that stuff, all that processed junk food, as food, and then we try to add and incorporate superfoods in to compensate for that. But that's the whole wrong idea. That's completely wrong. We should be basing our entire diet on superfoods, as we call them now, or food as it was once called, and occasional junk food might be okay. So this means that, yes, I'm sorry, people are gonna have to downsize junk food companies. These big junk food companies are gonna have to decrease in size. We're gonna have to, and it's okay. We can find new jobs, maybe making and growing real food for everybody and providing fresh food for everybody, maybe in other ways. We need to stop being so hung up on the economy and particular companies' existence and their perpetual growth, because that's killing us, it's poisoning us. In this society, we are literally allowing companies to put poison into our food, into our processed junk foods. I shouldn't be saying foods. And then serve it to us. And they addict us to it by putting sugar into it. And then, once we're poisoned and develop cancer, the big pharmaceutical companies create treatments to, well, not cure the cancer, because they don't even cure the cancer most of the time, but to maybe prolong your life if you're lucky, while having horrible side effects from the treatment. This isn't the answer. $5 billion more towards that isn't the answer. What great low side effect treatments have they come up with for cancer in the past 10 or 20 years? I mean, nothing's truly breakthrough, because I would be able to name it right here for you. So what do we really need to be doing? We need to be preventing cancer. We need to be putting at least as much resources into encouraging people into healthier lifestyles, shoring up our food system, domestically producing products that go on and in our bodies, nutritional programs, exercise programs, getting to the youth, training and educating the youth. These are things that we need to be spending money on, not more research that relies on pharmaceutical research, which in turn relies on the whole oil industry to produce all these chemicals, where we could be putting more research efforts into indigenous medicines, folklore medicines, traditional medicines, and just natural medicines in general. Thank you for listening to that special message. I hope you found it informative and inspiring. There's definitely a lot of work that we have to do to make this nation a lot healthier again, and I really hope that people are on board for this. So thank you for listening to this episode of Concentrates with Dr. T. Join me next time. Remember, we're going to get into dispensary reviews starting next week, so please join me for that. It'll be a lot of fun, and I hope to see you then. Peace.